Hello and welcome to Fire in the Belly. Today we have myself, Mighty Pete, and we're joined by the Kim Basler. Good afternoon. Good morning for you, actually.
That's right. Good morning. Good afternoon for you too, Pete. Thank you.
No, listen, thanks for coming on the show. So, Kim, tell us, who are you? What are you doing? Where are you from?
Yeah, I live just outside of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I work here as a coach. I call myself a food freedom and mindset coach. And I also still work in the fitness industry as well. I have a lot of history in that space. So I'm still serving and supporting in that space too. I'm a mother, 17 and 15 years old. And my furry friend, my golden retriever, and my husband. So we're one big happy family here.
So, where does the husband come in? Is he after the dog or before the dog?
I don't know. It just depends on the day.
It's always the way that generally the men are kind of going, yeah, kids first, dog second, me third. It's like, oh, it's great. So, tell me, food, freedom, and mindset. Give us, unwrap that for me a little bit.
Yeah. So, I mean, you'll hear about it in my story today, but it's helping women. I work specifically mostly with women, helping them be able to learn how to use food on their terms, having freedom, releasing the guilt, releasing the shame around what we eat, around when we eat. It's a lot around the dieting space and the feeling in control, losing control to food and feeling a lot of regret around food and how it shapes our life. So I want to give women the power to take that back and to use food in a way that serves them. But most importantly, which you'll learn, is being able to step into our full power in this world to do what we're meant to do. So really, and also unleashing some of the mindset around comparison and perfectionism and feelings of not being enough in this world. So it really, I coach on what my story was, and I'm helping women who need the lessons that I've learned in my life to empower them to become a better version of themselves.
So tell us, I mean, Kim, how long are you in this, this place of being within your purpose or your power then?
Yeah, I would say for sure I'm in the 3 year space. My journey started 4 years ago, where I had my big awakening in my life, where I started to step back into myself. But coaching specifically, I'm going into my for fantastic, because the more we're able to coach and support other women, the more we continue our own healing. So I'm very blessed in that regard.
No, definitely. It's always it's interesting. And I mean, who's your perfect client, or who can you assist the most then?
My perfect client would be somebody who recognizes that the way they're eating, the diets they've been on, all of the struggles with who they are, have not been serving them, how they're ready to do the work, they're ready to learn, they're ready to step into themselves. Once we heal that piece of ourselves, we now can use all of the energy that we used to put into worry about us not being enough, and we can now step into the world and do what we were meant to do, having those greater purposes. As someone who's ready to do the work and to heal what needs to be healed. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So, I mean, do you find food is often connected to our state of mind or our place where we're at? I mean, is food often a sort of a main factor in there?
Well, I mean, for me and for many people, because of for many reasons. I mean, if we're talking about people who are using food for emotional comfort and numbing or distraction, or people who are dealing with binge eating, body image issues. I mean, we think that if we control our body, the world tells us, diet culture specifically tells us that if we lose the weight, if we eat the proper way, that we're going to be happier. So I'm not really like, I help with nutrition, but I'm really going into the disordered eating patterns that people have around jumping from one diet to the next to try and find the thing that is supposed to make them happy. That I can't start living my life until I lose the weight, look back like I did in high school, fit into the certain size of clothes. So food really becomes a place where we lack the ability to, like, intuitively, when we were born, we knew how to eat. We knew when to eat food. We knew when to stop drinking from the bottle of breast. Like, we knew. But somewhere along the way, because of what happens in society, because of what we learn from our parents, from media, we lose that ability to connect with ourselves. And I mean, my story, as much as I talk about food, I mean, it was just food and controlling my body, which is what I was using as a way of trying to make myself like me, appearance of me, that I would be able to feel more fitting in the world and more comfortable in the world. So it almost becomes a way that you detach from yourself and you try to fix what you think needs to be fixed in order for you to be more likable in the world.
What I'm picking up there, I mean, it sounds like, food is actually the byproduct, if you like, or that's it's the symptom and not the cause. Have I picked that up correctly?
Yes, 100%. So you've nailed that right there, Pete. We think that in order for me to fix my issues with food, that I need to address the food. But the food and the relationship with food is simply the symptom of that underlying root cause that we need to address. So we need to go deeper than food, and we need to go right down into our emotions. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. I love it. So tell
Yeah.
us, I mean, before we get into it, really, I mean, what does fire in the belly mean to you first, Kim?
What does which?
What does fire in the belly mean to you?
Fire in the belly. Well, you know what? Now that I've been able to step into believing in who I am, getting out of my own way, because my issues with food then, like, they went into my whole work life in my limiting beliefs, right? So my whole story really took on its own shape. But now that I've been able to, you know, I want to, like, you can say hit that rock bottom, you can say mental breakdown. I don't like those terms. Like, I really believe enough to wake me up. And fire in the belly means to me is that this breathing energy in me that says you are here for a purpose. And I am taking my story and the struggles that I had in my story and using them to help other people. So there's no shame in it anymore. And I'm realizing more and more in this work that people, I say people, I've worked with some men, but mostly women. We need this because there's too many women in the world, too many people in the world who are not living with that fire in their belly. They're lost in that connection because of the limiting beliefs, because of the things that they think they're not. So now that I have this fire in my belly, I can't sit still. It's like I have so much to say, and the people that are going to receive what I have to say, I'm going to have to be louder. I have to be louder than what the world. We've got everybody on their corner selling the next new diet and selling the next new potions and pills. And so I have to get out there. I have to get in here and do these videos, because I do believe I lost 30 years of my life to this, Pete, if not more. I started dieting when I was 12. So what I know now, I have to reach people sooner. And so when I have a mother contact me about their 15-year-old daughter, like,
It's it's so powerful, isn't it? And that it's something that's been so intrinsic in your life for that length of time.
mhm.
And I mean, you mentioned 12 there. I mean, is
Yeah.
there something happened, or what triggered that, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I mean, we can look at what I know about food relationships is that we learn a lot of our patterns from home. So I did grow up in a home where there was a lot of dieting going on. So unlike new. This is what women have done for decades and decades. This is what women have been taught they're supposed to do in this world. So it becomes very normal for a woman to be on a diet. It becomes very normal for women to bond over the new diets that they're on. So I modeled it, Pete. I modeled what was happening. But at the same point in time, two things happened. Like, my parents split when I was 14. And that was a challenging time. But then the other piece is because once I got to the age of 14, I decided to join a gym, and I went into the fitness industry and I started teaching fitness classes at the age of 16. Already has body image issues, already has, a lack of belief in herself. And then she goes into an industry, and don't get me wrong, I love the fitness industry and I love it. But unfortunately, there's a lot of insecurity in there, and there's a lot of focus on the body. How it's not even, yeah, it can be about fitness, but it's also about what the body looks like, how many calories we can burn, how strong can we get, how low can we get our body fat. So these types of things just sort of morph together, and I mean the fitness industry. So I think the combination of my childhood, and right from a young age, I was standing on a scale. I started standing on a scale at the age of 12. And I stood on a scale until I was 41 every single day, if not several times a day, with my eating disorder stage of life. So, it becomes normal. Body weight scales are very normal for women to be using. We're taught that we can't trust our bodies. So we have to use some piece of metal that sits on the ground and worth. So there's a lot of my history that shaped, how I took that path for myself.
I mean, in terms of even suppose standing on the scales, were you specific about when you stood on the scales and how much clothing you were wearing and and how specific did you get certain times a day?
Very specific. This is where, and like, here's the thing about it, Pete. Over those 30 years, my relationship with my body and food took lots of different paths. Like, you tend to move into different spaces, binging, starvation, restriction. I always stood on the scale first thing in the morning, like, and it was buck naked. Like, you're naked. You are like, I literally would wake up, go to the bathroom. That had to happen first because, you had to make your body as light as humanly possible. And then, you stood on the scale. And like, this is the crazy part about it is 4 years ago, when I made that very hard decision to break up with the scale, I not only broke up with the scale, I threw away years and years of little pocket calendars that I tracked my weight in. So every time I stood on the scale, I wrote down what I weighed on that day. And of course, in years, that's where my eating disorder was more alive. So you could easily see on those days, me recording my weight 3-4 times a day. It could be after I went to the bathroom, before I went to the gym, after I came home from the gym, before I went to bed at night, because the scale dictated how I was allowed to eat that day and how hard I had to exercise. So it really, like, that was, if I always say, if there's anything that will either improve mental health, is that scale. Because I could wake up happy, and if I stood on that scale and it didn't tell me what I thought it should say, then everybody knew. Like, my husband always said, he knew when I was having a bad scale day based on my mood when I walked down the stairs. That's how it shaped me. Yeah.
Isn't it amazing that it's that specific, as you say, that it's almost a reflection back of your state for whatever reason, it's you know that actually that can adjust your mood and everything else. It's an external reflection rather than an internal how do I feel type thing. Isn't it
Yeah.
crazy?
Yeah. And like, that's the whole thing. We have those feelings inside of us. Like, even if a woman wants to change her body shape, because I have no problem if people want to change their body shape and they want to get healthier, it's all great. But it's the masculine approach that we are using to look at numbers and to track, whereby our body knows how we feel. We know when we might be feeling heavier, when we might be feeling more bloated, whatever, but yeah, it totally takes away from the internal connection to your body, and it pulls you outside of your body.
That's an interesting term. You talk about the masculine approach. Can you unpack that for
Mhm.
me?
Yeah. So let me just tell you this too. I studied out of an institute in Colorado called the Institute for the Psych. This is where I started to learn about this masculine and feminine approach. And a masculine approach, especially with the work that I do, is very, it's push. From a masculine energy, we push, we strive, we chase. Things are very number oriented. We have to, we feel like there's always something more that we have to go after. From a feminine approach, there is more flow, there is more trust, there's more internal connection, there's more willingness to pause, to reflect, to go inward. So we all know that some of us have more masculine energy than feminine energy, even as genders, right? So from a intuitive eating standpoint, which is what I teach on, is being able to intuitively learn how to trust our body, learn how to ask our body to go outside of us to find guidance. So from a masculine standpoint, that scale did keep me very focused on numbers and pushing. It distracted me and pulled me away from those inner callings that my body was trying to tell me for years, because I dealt with burnout for so many years. So it's this willingness to be able to not feel like we need to be chasing something all the time, and to know that we can pause and be as well. There's times in our life where we need more masculine energy, but there's also times in our life where we need more trust and more flow and more inner wisdom that comes from our soul.
So do people typically sort of ebb and flow then between that masculine, and I'm assuming when you say masculine, it's like they would be described maybe as away from goals, so I don't want to be, move away, strive to not be something.
Yeah,
Have I
yeah.
picked?
So women specifically, like, because again, that's who I know best, they feel like they can't be in their body.
Okay.
This body is not mine. uh, I don't know who I am in this body. And so they feel that they can become who they think they need to be by going outward and seeking that outside appearance. So it just pulls us away. It pulls us away from, especially if somebody has history with shame and not addressing those deeper emotions, because we use dieting and we use body focus as a way of distracting us from the things that we have to deal with in our life. The other thing I want to say is that if a person has had history with trauma or any types of struggle, and they haven't learned how to be with it, to heal it, it's like, or let's say there's loss, or let's say there's a lack of fulfillment or connection to themselves. They use food as a way of trying to fill those voids, but then when the relationship with food causes them to start gaining weight, they can't handle that. So then instead of addressing what is the root cause of their food relationship, they then try to just fix the food issue, and they'll go and find another diet, or they'll go and try and use exercise. So it's really pulling us away from those deeper lessons and the deeper wisdom that we have inside of us that's trying to come out.
Hmm. I mean, is it too binary to say that your food values are your voids?
Yes, I would say that. I would say that because if you have dealt with loss, so if you have never found someone to share love with, and you feel this void, this emptiness inside of you, maybe you didn't receive love from your parents, maybe there was void right from childhood, and you found a way, whether you modeled it from your parents, because maybe your parents taught you that too. Food is being used so often as a place of reward. And here's the thing I want to say. What I address with my clients is, and I had to do this for myself, we have to release the shame. We have to release that there's something wrong with us. Our bodies, our human spirit has literally just found a way of coping with those deeper feelings. And food has stepped in. Food has stepped in. It's no different than if somebody chooses a drug, or somebody chooses pornography, or shopping or gambling. These people have chosen to use food. And the thing about it is, I normalize it, Pete, because food is everywhere. Food is everywhere. It's not shunned upon. We all need to eat food to live, to survive. It's very readily available, and it works. It's instant gratification. As soon as you eat that chocolate bar, as soon as you eat that pasta or whatever it is you're choosing, it immediately fills us up. It fills us up, and it gives us that love that we need. it's not a problem, Pete, unless it becomes a problem for a person. I want to take away the shame around emotional eating. Sometimes people feel I shouldn't be emotionally eating. This is wrong. Food is supposed to give us pleasure. Food is supposed to make us feel good. It just becomes a problem when we don't have a healthy balance around it. And we know that every time we feel stressed, every time we feel lonely or anxious, that food is that best friend that immediately we go to, that we don't have any other coping skills. So it fills the void. It fills the void. But unfortunately, for many people, it starts to become an area of concern in their life, especially if their health starts to be impacted. And especially if there's a lot of shame. There's so much hiding. As when people use food as a way of unwinding, de-stressing, filling the void, they don't feel like they can do it in front of people a lot. So then they secretly eat in a closet, in their car, hiding in a bedroom. And then the shame builds because so often they have these secrets that the other people that might be living in their home aren't even aware about. So like for me and my story, I used food as a way of trying to control me and to control my body size. So my story with food is one area, but for another person, it could be a loss of a parent at the age of 6, or it could be trauma, or it could be that food was used at one point in their life as punishment. You can't have this until you do this. You're a good girl, now you can have this. So we start to adopt all of these behaviors, and then they start to come into our life, and they never leave unless we start to recognize that there's a concern for them. So it just depends.
I mean, can I ask, going back, right? I mean, sort of mini Kim, way back, what sort of a person were you, and do you remember your relationship with food even as a young child, or who would we have met? Put it like that.
Yeah. Well, I don't have a lot of memories. They're slowly surfacing back from when I was a wee child, but food was something that I couldn't trust. That's how I can sum it up. I didn't feel safe around food. It was like an all or nothing. I loved my sweets. I loved my quote unquote bad foods that the world tells us we shouldn't eat. I loved that food, and I was distracted from food. It wasn't like uh, it was very rushed a lot. There was not that slower connection. And, you know, again, because everything started at such a young age, right from the very beginning, I felt that I needed to control me and control food, that it wasn't just food. Like for some people, food is just food. They stop when they've had enough. They eat when they're hungry, and food is just neutral. But for me and for many people, food was there's a term that people use is food is the enemy. It is something that is not to be trusted. It is something that you know takes us away, and we have to control. I mean, if we look back in history, I mean, think about all the different ways that we were told to not feel safe around food. There was calorie counting, there was point counting, there was counting your macros. And then, of course, all the food trends. You can't eat gluten, you can't eat dairy, now you can't eat sugar, fat free many, many decades ago. Like it just keeps going on. And it's done to that extent because that is what we are being taught so that they can earn and get more money from us, right? So I just think that for decades and decades, we have not been feeling empowered around our food choices. That's been taken away from us.
Isn't it amazing, like you say, even at that early age, that the associations with it, as you say, and just even as you talk, I'm probably doing it with my own kids unintentionally. It's, finish your food and then you get a treat, or,
Yep.
it just
Or yeah. And you know what? This is a good conversation because we don't even know we're doing it. So that's why I share. What about the concept of finish your plate? You can't leave the table until you finish your plate. People that I talk with, and I know very well in this field of work that I'm in, people that don't know how to understand hunger and fullness and know when they've had enough. So people that struggle with overeating, um, it's so often that they have to finish their plate so that they eat, and they eat because of these patterns we grew up with. Or you have to eat your vegetables first before you can have your dessert. And so all of a sudden, those desserts now bring those warm, happy feelings in us. And then we take those on. So, granted, granted, we know that it's challenging as parents eat balanced, from their plate, but we we have to take the power and the moral value off of food. There's food that is more nutritious, there's food that gives us more energy, and there's also foods that might not give us much energy. But we don't have to label them as good and bad, because right away from our young childhood, that's what we're taught about ourselves, and it just carries with us forever.
I noticed that. I mean, you sort of you switch language slightly in terms of almost, whether it be your feeling of fullness or your feeling of having had enough. It's almost like a third party. So you're sort of saying, I feel full, as opposed to, I'm trying to loop it back in terms of what you were saying, but it's, you know, you've had enough food, or that there's not enough there. I don't know if I've quite
Yeah.
been clear about that. Does that make sense?
There, it does. And there's a lot here, because again, everything is shaped from. So if we grew up in a home where there was 5, 7 kids around the table and there wasn't a lot of food, so it was like, who gets to the seconds first, right? Who can eat the fastest, Pete? Who can eat the fastest to get the last piece of pie? So we are distracted for many reasons with our body's ability to tell us when we're hungry and when we've had enough. Okay. So if somebody has history with overeating, binge eating, distraction with food, or even just eating foods that, even let's even step away from that and go, even people who have sensitivities to foods. And all of a sudden you've ate the food and now you feel really uncomfortable in your body because your body doesn't want that food in it. We have to be able to slow down enough with food. This is one of the things that I teach is, and it seems so simple, but we are eating too fast. We are distracted when we eat. And so this ability for us to say, I'm I'm working right now. I have a deadline, but my stomach is grumbling and I'm really, really hungry and I'm feeling foggy in my brain because I need food. But either A, we don't want to stop, or B, we have rules that say when we're allowed to eat again based on a diet we might be following. And so then we push off those cues. And the longer you push off those cues of hunger, or if you're in a place of stress in your body, really high levels of stress, you're distracting yourself from those cues that are coming up, telling you that you need food. So there's that piece of it. But then there's the piece of, eating too fast, eating in front of the television, eating in the car. And then all of a sudden we fill our bodies up too quickly, or maybe we're filling those voids that we talked about earlier in this conversation. So one of the things that I do teach is to help us step away from the outside rules that tell us how we can eat and tune back into what our body is asking for. Because at all different stages of our life, sometimes we're going to need more food. If we've come off of an illness, if we are maybe we ate a lot for one day, we were at these festivities and we ate a lot of food. The next day, we might not be as hungry because our body still has a lot of food in it that it's still trying to digest. So I want to empower people. I want to empower people to be able to address what they need in their body versus feeling like they have to follow something outside of their body telling them.
I'm curious. I mean, do bodies still have like food seasons? I don't know if such a thing exists, but I'm kind of, if I was out in the wild and I knew winter was coming, I'm gonna, fill my face. I'm gonna squirrel. I'm gonna sort of pick up fat. I mean, do we still mimic that subconsciously?
Yeah, we absolutely do. And you know what you're saying right now, too. I address this when it comes down to women. Of course, a lot of times there's high levels of stress, right? And we're not stopping to eat. But if you think about it, if you're out being chased by an animal, or you're not going to stop and eat, right? You're not going to stop and eat. But yes, we do have these. I think about it more from a place of seasons too, because different times of the year, our body will ask for different types of food. I don't know if you experience that. Like in the colder months, you want more warmer, comfort type foods, whereby maybe in the warmer months, when it's hotter, we want more light foods, fruits, vegetables, salads, because our body's already hot to begin with. So it just depends. It just depends. But there's definitely a lot of our history, and even the history of our ancestors. Like that's why we have to be able to address people. We try to all eat the same a lot of the time, but your body, Pete, is different than my body, right? So we have to get to know what our body needs based on our ancestry history.
How how do you get to that? How do you get to that raw point that you make sure that, and I kind of reflecting slightly back on the voids being your values thing, but in terms of what my body actually needs versus, how can you tell if it's the truth? So I feel like this food, is it that I actually want or need this food at this time, or is it because I associate that to something else, or that's going to make me feel good, or that reminds me of such and such, or whatever? Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. I mean, to me, it comes down to physical hunger versus emotional hunger. Okay. So physical hunger means that my body is telling me it's hungry. And so we have to get to, again, this is something I have to teach sometimes. If people have years and years of dieting, they have lost the ability to listen to their body's cues. So, what does your body tell you when it's hungry? How does it speak to you? What do you notice about your body? So, the first thing, again, if somebody is feeling the need to eat, that's the first question to ask yourself. Am I physically hungry? If you are physically hungry, yes, we need to address that need. So that's important for people who have a lot of dieting history and a lot of body issues, is giving that trust back to their body, because the body needs to know that you're going to take care of it, to build a relationship with it. Emotionally, if I'm not physically hungry, so if I have somebody feeling the need to go to the refrigerator, feeling the need to stop off at the fast food restaurant on the way home from work, asking the question, if I'm not physically hungry, then what am I looking for? So addressing the feelings that are inside of us, am I feeling stressed? Am I feeling overwhelmed? Am I angry? Am I still upset about something my boss said to me 4 hours ago? Is that still lingering in me? A lot of it comes down to those underlying feelings of I'm not enough, rejection, not being heard, not being understood. These are deeper, deeper things, but I know that it exists. It's the root of it. It's like my spirit has been wounded. My I have been undervalued as who I am as a person. And so the feeling comes up in them, some type of feeling. They might not even know it's there, but it's there. And their brain immediately knows there's that feeling inside of you again. Let's go take care of it. Let's go get something from the fridge. So the only way that you can start to address these areas is to practice a pause. You have to be able to pause. When people are wanting to really work on this part of themselves, the immediate gratification, the impulse is to go right back to the fridge, go right back, stop in at that restaurant right away. But you have to be willing to pause and sit with yourself and address the feelings inside of you. One of the things I always ask my clients to ask themselves is, what am I hoping this food will do for me right now? What am I hoping to feel after I am done eating this juicy hamburger from a fast food restaurant? What am I wanting to feel? And so often it's calm, it's peace, it's less stress. And so we have to address those pieces. It's ultimately coming down to self-care. It's self-care for the body. What do I need to do for myself? Why am I feeling so overwhelmed and stressed? What do I need to do in my life to start to lower down the stress and be able to fill those needs in us that we have, that the food is playing that part for us. I think that answers your question.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's loads there, and and each part could be sort of plowed through or picked through. Take us
Mhm.
back though to your own story. I mean, you know, sort of starting to diet at 12. I mean, what sort of dropped that seed or idea into your head?
Well, again, I try to think about it sometimes and unpack it, and then I just go, I'm not sure what's the point of it, right? But I
Mhm.
can tell you two things. Again, I saw it modeled in my house. So I witnessed this as a child. Even before I started dieting, Pete, I was going to weight loss groups with my mother before I went to school. So right from a very, very little young age, I was witnessing women and their conversations about their bodies and their food, what they were allowed to eat, how bad they felt, how bad they are because they gained 2 pounds that week. Like, I witnessed this conversation. I remember it. So that was there. At the same point in time, was I more drawn to the behaviors because I lacked from a young age this feeling of self-acceptance? Because my story didn't just stop with my body. It went into being trying to be a perfectionist, trying to people please, just trying to be everything for everyone else. So I believe at a root cause, I lacked this belief in who I was. And I was trying to validate myself by doing things for other people. But then I would judge myself and that it wasn't enough. And you put a comparison, you put comparison with perfectionism with people pleasing. You put that into one body with all the body issues I have. It's so I really believe for me it was more about self-acceptance, because if I accepted myself for who I was, I might not have been drawn as deeply into the dieting, the body image issues, the people pleasing. I would have had a more of a connection with who I was, and I wouldn't have, fell into those deep holes. So impactful. And I mean, I'm sure like took a huge turn. Took a huge turn in 2016 is when so many times I had experienced burnout. You try to, you're a mother, you're a wife, you're trying to do it all. You got the balls in the air and you're just like hoping one doesn't fall at the wrong time. And it's really, really overwhelming. And my body started getting sick. So it what I know now is that all along I have been who I needed to be. And as I unpeel and as I unpack and I get back to the root of who I am and I find out who this girl Kim is, it's pretty powerful. And you can sit there and you can go like, "Oh my gosh, I lost 30 years of my life to this, if not more." 30 years for sure in the dieting space, 12 years old to 41. But even just before that, you just, and hence why I just like, how can we get to these kids, these young girls, especially in this world, girls and boys. I have to highlight, boys are struggling with this now too, from a different angle. For the boys, it's the aesthetics, it's the body image. How much muscle do I have? Do I have a six pack? This is what the boys are growing up with. It's forms of anxiety, right? So with social media and everything now, we have to address this at such a younger age. Because if I know what happened to me, and back then there wasn't social media, right? So you can imagine what's happening to our children now. That's why mental health is especially during this pandemic, like that's why so many are suffering. This is why my business has been essentially blowing up during this pandemic, because people are at home. People have lost all of the things that they used to go to. They used to work long hours at work to avoid being home. They used to go to the gym and burn off all the food that they ate because they had overate or ate wrong based on their terms. We've lost all of these things during this pandemic. People's relationships at home, it's like all of a sudden now I'm forced to spend more time with my spouse and I don't even love them anymore. Right? You think about reasons why people use food, these are the reasons.
That's interesting, that you use food.
Yeah, you use food. for there is a lot of people that believe, and it's even seen and discussed by professionals, that food is a drug. That food is a drug, that I am an addict. I hear this a lot. And I'm not going to say that I don't disagree with it to some level. Food does impact our brain. It does light up the receptors in our brain. Yes, it does. However, I also want to say that food is not something that we can just quit like a drug. We need food to survive. I also don't believe that putting a label on ourselves and feeling shame, either feeling shame, but also it's almost an out. It's almost a, I'm an addict. I'm going to deal with this issue with carbs for the rest of my life. I'm going to use food for the rest of my life. This is just the way it's going to be. And the person slowly disembodies, slowly steps out of their body. We all have the ability to learn how to be with ourselves. And I don't believe that shame helps anyone. What I do believe is that we need more compassion and we need more curiosity rather than judgment. So I can look and say, wow, I'm using food every time my husband tells me I'm fat. I can use food every time my boss makes me feel small and, bullies me in front of the other associates. So when you start to look at those pieces, you're not anymore to blame. It's like, it only makes sense. My soul, myself is feeling really, really uncomfortable. And so I'm certainly just trying to take care of these feelings. So it's like, I'm doing the best I can. I actually say to people, I'm proud of you that you've actually, not proud, but you could be doing so many other forms of self-hatred. And if you're using food, we can work with that. It's not like you're, using drugs and damaging your body that way, or cutting or anything like that. Like and it just makes a person, because they feel so much shame that they eat this way. And when they feel that they're being heard and they're feeling that they're being understood, they can meet themselves with kindness. Because when we hate ourselves and we do acts of nutritional habits or diets or exercising as a place of hatred, that's not the way we're going to grow and evolve, is by hating our bodies and doing things to hate our bodies. So does it light up our brain? Yes, it does. But so does sex, so does music, so does a lot of things. So it's not that it's wrong. It's normal, it's okay. But we do at a point have to address, like I just co-authored a collaborative book called Owning Your Choices. And we all have the ability to make choices. So I can choose to go and eat a hamburger or a bag of chips or a sleeve of cookies, or I could choose to sit here with my emotions, and I could choose to sit here and see what my body is trying to tell me. I can choose to be uncomfortable. I can choose to sit with myself instead of just choosing the quick and easy way out, which is food. So, but you see, I'm not doing it from a place of shame and judgment. I'm just asking people to check in. I was the queen of running. Like, I ran from everything, Pete. Whenever I was feeling feelings inside of me, my marriage was having issues, like whatever it was, I didn't think I was being the perfect mother. I ran from things so often. And there's a point where we have to stop running. We have to stop running, and we have to be willing to sit with ourselves and peel back and look at those parts of ourselves, look at, our ego, and look at the things that we're doing. Nobody can do it for us. Nobody can do this for us. No one is forcing me to eat a certain way. No one's doing that. No one's choosing, no one's making me starve myself. No one's making me put my head into a toilet to get food out of my body. No one's making me do that. There is eating disorders, yes, but you can still receive help and you can still learn coping skills to help you. There's a lot, right? This is a big subject, but it's we have to do the work for ourselves. We have to do the work for ourselves, because ultimately it comes down to the fact that somewhere on a soul level, we are uncomfortable.
As you speak there, I'm sensing a lot of emotion, a lot of energy.
Yeah. It's I just know people are struggling. And so it bothers me a lot that our world is making people feel that their body's wrong, feel that who they are is not enough. And I just know what it did to me. My marriage almost fell apart from it. Knowing what I know now about myself, Pete, and knowing what I now know about human behavior, we have to be kinder to ourselves. We just do. There's for some reason, we think that if we talk meanly to ourselves, if we take away all the things that bring us pleasure, like that's what people do. It's like, I can't have any of this food in my house. I can't have any of it in my house. But meanwhile, you have a fond memory of something that food did for you, from a connection to your grandma maybe. But like, you're losing all the pleasure. Food was never supposed to do this. Food bonds us. Like, think of all the times you're sitting around the table with your family, right? And you're bonding over food, celebrating a birthday. Like, it's just all along. We owe it to ours. It brings up emotion for me because I just know what I lost in my life. And it's I don't have regret, because I had to learn those lessons. And I'm thankful that my family stood by me while I figured it out.
Where are you with it today?
Still healing. Like, you don't take 30 years. So where am I at it today? So my body's changed a lot. I've had to learn and continually remind myself that health and happiness is not solely what the physical body looks like when you see it in the mirror. My mental health, Pete, got so poor that for a year and a half before I finally left my career, I couldn't sleep anymore. I woke up every 90 minutes of my night. Every 90 minutes I woke up, and I barely slept in the first place because I was a workaholic. But I had hives all over my body, which we couldn't figure out what they were from. I had a marriage that was falling apart. And I had, near the end of it, I had suicidal thoughts. So is that healthy? Is that healthy? When your body is being idolized because my body was fit, strong, right? So to the outside world, look at Kim. But in here and in my physical, no. Stress. So much stress. Emotional heaviness. So where am I today? Healing still. Getting used to my new body. And as I cry here, there's actually a lot of gratitude for the journey. In that, you know, I'm finally allowing myself to be seen. This is me. This is me. This is who I am. I'm healthier than I ever have been. I sleep through the night now every single night. I no longer wake up. It took me about 8 or 9 months for my body's hives to go away. That was an autoimmune, issue. The stress in my body was causing the hives. They're gone. But at the same point in time, as they slowly went away, that was like a barometer for my health. So if my stress levels got too high, the hives came back. So I believe that is likely still in me now to some level, and it'll be the cue for me. I have such a deeper connection to my present now, like to the present moment, to being able to see things, the smallest little things that other people would just look over, right? To me, so much gratitude for the small things because I see them now. So I view the world very differently now. And I have so much more compassion for people now. Because the more I've learned to love me and accept me and honor my journey, the more I can do that for other people. And that's why I recognize that every human being has wounds. We all carry everything. We carry stuff. We carry stuff that has been passed on from our parents, that we took on when we came into this world. And I just believe that the more we allow ourselves to be real, to cry, to share, to have these open conversations, this is healing. This is giving other people permission to do the same. When I share my story, I haven't cried like this for a while. You pulled it out of me today, Pete. But when I used to start sharing my story, I cried a lot because it was just, there's a couple things. You just know how much you've carried for so long. I carried so much for so long in secrecy. And the other thing is that the more you do this work and the more you get to meet people and you have another person share some of their pain, some of their traumas, some of the things that they've held in secrecy because they thought something was wrong with them, and you give someone permission to share and to be heard and to be understood, it's a beautiful, beautiful space. So I just know that, like, as much as I'm still healing, because I've got, other areas in my life that I'm still working on, I give myself permission to do it now. I give myself permission to feel and to not judge, but just to feel. And the more we give ourselves permission to feel, the more we're able to be fully here. And, going back to food, then food isn't something that, well, and here's the thing, Pete, like, it's not like we're never going to use food sometimes to support our emotions. It's okay. It's not wrong. It's not wrong to use food to make us happy if we're feeling some sadness. I mean, we all do it, right? It's not a problem. But again, it comes down to, is it more often being used than feeling? To cry, to share, to get angry, to use your voice, to stand up for yourself, to set boundaries in your life, to prioritize yourself so that you don't lose sight of yourself. So it's a journey, and I welcome it. And it's, you know, I'm 4 years into it. It's only been 4 years since I left my career. And like, I still teach fitness. I still do it. I just don't, I was in management before, so I don't do that anymore. I'm building my own business now, and it's beautiful and I love it. But I can now teach on a stage and teach fitness from a really different space, because you can imagine if I was carrying all this heaviness, emotional heaviness and mental stress every single time I jumped on a stage, and I would put that microphone on my head and I'd have to like pretend that everything was fine and like motivate 40 people, put on my smile, because I was known for this smile, Pete. Like, this smile is always on my face, and it's a genuine smile now. But a lot of times it was forced. It was forced because I was tired. So I just show up in the world very differently now than I used to. It's lighter. It's lighter to come into the world this way now. To know that not everyone needs to like you. Not everybody has to agree with you. You don't have to make everyone happy all the time, but just being a good person with a good heart. Because if you take care of yourself, then you can take care of the other people easier, right? So it's a good space. And I'm excited for my future and where it takes me. And I can tell you that my journey with myself allows me to be an amazingly better parent now. You know, to be able to parent my teens. My daughter's 17, going into university next year, dealing with the stressors. She's a little mini me, you know? So I can now help her learn the lessons that I needed to learn a long time ago, right? I can help her with that now. So that's a fantastic feeling. Same with my son, you know, like, I just have different strengths now. I've learned so much in self-development and self-love that I parent. I can be a better wife. I can understand my husband more. I can not judge him because I judged myself, right? So if you judge yourself really harshly, you then do that to other people. So I just have more kindness and compassion everywhere now. And that is health for me. That is happiness for me.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
You used expression there, going back to who I am. Can you unpack that for us?
Still learning that. I think it's just coming back to the essence of my gifts, my strengths, what I was born with. I believe in God, what he created me to be, recognizing my strengths, honoring my limitations, my weaknesses, and knowing that all of them together make me me. And being able to find that out. And then that's the thing, like, can you really find it out? How do you find it out? I just choose to every day live as authentically me as I possibly can. How does my energy feel? Why did I show up that way? Why did I feel threatened? What triggered me there? And I just walk with it all. And I start to learn about me. And like, what I know about me, I have a big heart. My ability to hold space in my heart for other people, it's a beautiful strength I have. And I've learned that because I honor me more, because I have had this intense journey, that I'm helping people and attracting people into my life that need it too. That feels really good. You got me crying a lot now, Pete. They're flowing.
Hey, listen, I thank you for your vulnerability, because it's a big thing.
Yeah. Yeah, like I used to feel so much embarrassment with tears. I don't know why. I think just because they fall fairly freely for me. And now that I've let them, it's just, I think it's just how my soul speaks, you know? And it really doesn't matter. I don't need to figure it out, right? I don't need to figure it out. It's just, this is me. What you see is what you get with me.
You were particularly, when you mentioned about having a big heart, that's something that seemed to resonate very, very deeply for you. Why is that?
I'm not sure how to answer that. I can just, my heart feels from people what they might not even feel. You know, I just, I think it's just, I don't even know how to answer it for you, but I just feel that my heart has a lot of love to give. And it just wasn't able to do it before because it was too caught up in all the other stuff. But it's also a heart though that still can be wounded, you know, like if somebody hurts my heart, it's hurt, right? Whereby for some people they can just, you know, fluff things off, right? But for me, my heart feels things more. So I'm learning to be with it and honor it, you know, listen to what it wants to say to me.
Be able to listen to listen to yourself, to listen to your own inner voices, and that is a true strength, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and again, it just brings me back, Pete, to the fact that the more we can be with ourselves and like appreciate all parts of ourselves, we then can do that for other people. You know, like if I can't love myself fully, then I can't give out that love on the same level, you know? So the more I've been able to just appreciate who I am, the more I'm able to just use those gifts to their fullest level. At the same point in time, we go back to my people pleasing tendencies, you know, because I have such a heart and because I want to help people and I want to like hold space for people and people reach out to you and they want to share things with you. But at the same point in time, my physical energy needs to be protected. So that's another thing that I'm learning in this coaching space is I take in a lot of heavy stuff, right? I take in a lot of stuff. And I think because the way I hold space for people, people come to me, which is wonderful. But I then have to learn how to release that because it's like my heart's just like every day, right? So I have to learn how to release it so that I can still keep doing this work. That's what I'm learning too. Setting boundaries for myself, setting time for recharge, closing off, you know, social media sometimes, like learning how to press pause to make sure that I'm taking care of myself.
How well have you found that you can actually monitor your own status? I mean, are you good at that, or does it need to be? Do you need an outside observer?
I think I'm improving more and more as I'm in this space. My husband and I have a good relationship that way. You know, he'll be like, "Are you coming out of your office? Like, turn it off, right?" So, you know, and the nice thing is that I'm in a space now where
I'm able to listen to him and not feel, because before, when he would say to me, "You're working too much, you're never around," like back in the day, I I couldn't hear what he was saying because I was so caught up in needing to validate my own ego. So my lack of worth, I tried to fill it by doing things for other people. But now, I recognize that in order for me to show up and do this work, in order for me to continue to build my business, because I don't want to just stop here, Pete. Like, I don't want to just coach. Like, I want to be on stages, I want to speak. And so I have to be able to get my quality sleep. Because if my sleep, and I do now, but I think it's more just learning how to like press pause sometimes, press pause and have a day of no social media and no posts to respond to. And, like, I'm learning it. I think, granted, I will say, you and I both know, like, when you start a business and it's your baby, you have to put energy into it or it will not grow and it will not feel nourished, right? So, granted, yes, have to show up, have to wear all the hats in the business, right? My husband's a self-employed as well, so he gets it. But I want to keep nurturing the relationships in my home too, so they become stronger as well.
It is, yeah. I mean, it's such a fascinating topic.
We've gone in many directions, haven't we?
As you were speaking earlier, and it's almost, from a coaching perspective, it's almost the perfect goal, if that makes sense. Because food, it's, you have to, as you say, somebody prepares something for you or you prepare it for somebody else. So there's an emotional exchange.
Yep.
I made this dinner for you, vice versa, you made it for me, etc. How that's then received, okay? You have the visual aspect. How does it look? It appeals to me, it appeals to you, vice versa. You can smell it. So we're triggering all the senses here. How does it taste? So from a coaching perspective, if you want to set a goal for somebody in 5 years' time, it's like, right, we need you to visualize what it's going to look like, how it's going to feel, what's it going to taste like, what's it going to smell like, what can you see, hear, taste, touch, etc. All the senses. So it's kind of, I don't want to use the word deadly, but it is. I mean, it's so it's so powerful just because it is so wrapped up and even the, you talked about there as well as, bonding over food.
Yeah.
Like, food is the foundation. It's like, you don't, you bond together. You don't, bonding over food suggests that to bond, there has to be food involved. Do you know what I mean? So do you even just unpacking the language? It's so much.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots there that you're sharing, because I think that that's the other thing, is that food has been the place that we have bonded over, right? Like, we can't have a family gathering without food, right? Like, it just comes with it. But, there's lots of things that you're sharing there, and, not a right way or wrong way to answer this question, but this is why we have to allow all of our senses to experience life. There's a lot of, from a mind body nutrition standpoint, our body needs to receive pleasure from food. It needs to receive the aroma, the visual, like the satisfaction. So if I am distracted when I'm eating, if I'm rushed, if I'm eating food that I don't enjoy, how many people are eating foods that they don't even enjoy? Many, let me tell you. People from a dieting standpoint who are eating the same foods over and over and over because those are the foods that are allowable. It takes away all of it. So again, here's the other thing I want to share on this. So when people use food as a place of giving them love and giving them excitement, giving them things to look forward to, this is where I ask us to look at where else are you receiving pleasure in your life? Where else are you filling up your eyes with really cool things to see? Where else are you experiencing life, establishing new hobbies, speaking to the creative side of yourself? So if I have nothing in my life that fulfills me, that fills my senses, that gives me things to experience, because all I do is go to work every day at the job I hate, and then I come home to my children who, I'll just use some paraphrasing, are spoiled brats who are disrespectful to me. Okay. So the woman feels very, very unheard, unappreciated everywhere she goes. The children go to bed. Hubby goes and lies on a couch in the basement and watches his movie. She's left in the living room, and in comes food. In comes food to make me feel better. So being able to look at life, where am I experiencing joy? Do I actually like my life? Do I do things for myself that make me feel good? Do I experience laughter? Do I share conversations like you and I are having right now with people? Or is everything very superficial? We again, it's all coming back to the food is playing a role in your life, especially when it's not one that is serving you. So again, we got to go and check in. We got to check in our life, look for the things that we can start to consume, experience, receive, that will fill us up in the areas of our life that we are feeling empty. And so therefore food doesn't have to play that role. See, again, this goes back to the beginning of our conversation. We think that we have to fix the food. I have to address the food issue. We don't. The food issue often will take care of itself when we start to work on all the parts of our life that need some TLC. The food naturally doesn't have to be like controlled. I used food to de-stress all the time because I was overworking myself, trying to be everything to everyone, as I said. As soon as I learned how to take care of my needs, step away from the things that were making me feel less than, the food didn't have that same pull on me anymore. As soon as I started to release all of the labels around food and gave myself permission to eat foods the way I wanted to, that I didn't have to earn things. I didn't have to exercise in order to have that piece of cake. Like all that stuff that's in my history, and so many people's history, it just takes care of itself over time. I dove in though, Pete, right? Like I dove in. I had to. Like I said, I wrote a post a couple days ago that I said that, if I wouldn't have left my career, like I left it with nothing to turn to. But I know that I needed to do that because I was the type of person who kept running. And like, it's like I'd experience burnout and then I'd be like, oh, no, I'm fine. I'm just a little bit tired. Things will get better. And then I would just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. I needed to step away. I needed to. I remember seeing my therapist and I some of the things, like I say all the things, it was like, my life will be better when. If I didn't have these issues with food, I would be happy. If I didn't have to keep trying to lose weight, I'd be happy, So I had to go through all of this. I had to step away. I had to do this work because, we just have to. I think I took a tangent there, but I guess it was meant to be said for a reason.
Do you prefer to give or to receive?
To give. Yeah, I shouldn't have even hesitated to give 100%. I have receiving, I can hear it. Receiving's been hard. And maybe it's because of feeling deserving of it. But I've learned that they are reciprocal. When I give, somebody's want to give back to me. So they have to come both ways. Because when I receive, I'm having somebody else give, which fills them up. So we do this for each other, right? Getting better at receiving. And I've learned too that the more I receive, the more comes at me. You know, the more I'm able to receive a new client, another one's coming. Instead of, you know, in the earlier stages, when you're learning to attract people that you want to support, it takes time, right? But it's energy. Money is energy. Gifts are energy. This is how we want to give to each other. So there's abundance of it if we open our hearts to it.
Isn't it funny as because I've noticed that in my own patterns.
Yeah.
I'm a good giver. I'm a terrible. Well, I'll rephrase that. I
Caught
used to
yourself
be.
your words.
I used to really struggle with receiving.
Okay.
And you used a very interesting word there about deserving.
Yeah. 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 I mean, it for me, it comes right back to self-acceptance. Because if I accept who I am and I love who I am, then I will be able to receive from people because I know I'm a good person and I deserve it, you know? Yeah, to me, a lot comes back to self-acceptance, which is a term that's obviously used a lot, right? It's not a new term to anybody, but there's just a lot underneath that title, that name, that word.
Do you? What part of you deserves it? Do you know?
What part of me deserves it? I want to say my heart. My heart deserves it. That's the only way I know how to answer that. To me, everything comes to the heart. That's the heart, the soul. That's where it is for me. It's the first thing that comes into our life when we're born. You know, when there's life in us, it's the last thing that leaves us, right? So that's how I would answer that.
There's a term or expression you used there, and it's sort of, well, it's a mixture of both, but talk to me about emotional weight.
Emotional weight. Emotional weight is the anguish, the shame, the limiting beliefs, the inner critic, the chatter in our head that tells us that we are not good enough, that we're not doing good enough. And it's heavy. It's heavy. It takes up a lot of space in our body. It's energy. And I speak about this because a lot of people focus on the physical weight. It's like, I'm too heavy. My body's too big. It feels too heavy to pull my body around. So they focus on physical weight to lose. I then talk about emotional weight. What are you carrying every day that is heavy, that creates stress in you, that makes it so hard for you to exist every day and do the things you have to do every day? It doesn't show up as physical weight on a scale, but it's heavy. So what I like to do, again, as a client with my clients, is being able to work on the parts of ourselves that are weighing us down. Because if we can lighten up our world a little bit, or a lot, because I lighten my world up a lot, you then don't feel so heavy. You don't feel so heavy. And part of that, we haven't even touched on this, is looking at what your body looks like in terms of society standards, in terms of, how bodies are shamed in society based on their size, based on how they look. So when you again go back to self-acceptance and you recognize that all bodies are deserving of love, all bodies are deserving to be here, then you take off that heaviness that you've been carrying around, that your body is wrong, that it doesn't belong to take up space. That makes life a lot lighter, and that takes away emotional weight.
Yeah, it's such a strong thing. I mean, there's an expression that's used and it's sort of evolved, that we're all sort of meat tubes or meat souls in a meat suit, which I think is great. It's like someone called it a meat tube and someone called it a meat suit, but it's, we're all souls in a meat tube. But that just goes to show that actually, we are so much more. The body is just a vehicle.
Yeah, it is the vessel, right? It is the vessel that our soul is here to do its work. I always say that the last thing that we should ever be doing is showing up, at our grave, when we pass on, and that this is all we've been focused on our whole life. Another term I learned about, not terms, but concepts in my schooling that I did for this is looking at our archetypes. Under the age of 35-ish, we, as women or men, it's the princess, it's the prince archetype, where we're really focused on other people and what they think of us. Very selfish focused, what do they think of me? Very worried. How do I look? All that stuff. How much money do I have? And what should be happening as we get older into our 40s, we should, I'm emphasizing on that word because I do want to intentionally use it. We ideally should be shifting into queen or king archetype. As a queen, where I am, I'm 45. It's recognizing our gifts, recognizing our strengths, and bringing up other women, like collaboration. Unfortunately, what happens with some women who do not make the shift, this is why I was at a gym several years ago, and a woman in her 70s, a very petite, tiny woman, came up to me and said, how do I get rid of my stomach? And she was in her 70s. At what point in our life are we going to be able to release that? No one's going to stand around at your funeral over the coffin and say, wow, look at her body. Look at her handbags. Look at his this. Look at his abs. We're going to be remembered for who we are. We're going to be remembered for how we've contributed to the world, how we've impacted, how we've served. That's how we're remembered. But if our focus is on our body and our focus is on all of this extra stuff, then we can't serve on the level that we were meant to. We can't use our gifts to their fullest potential. Now, I will say, because I'm still an advocate for health, is that yes, we have to keep our bodies healthy. Yes, we need to take care of the vessel. Yes, we do. But it isn't just about like food and exercise. It's about our thoughts. It's about our sleep. It's about having loving connections. It's about laughter. It's about faith, spirituality, like it's everything. So, I just want to see that shift happening earlier for people, right? Because it's there's too much untapped potential in this world. There's too many people, whether it be that they have a body issue, like whatever, it could be that. But I'm even talking about people who are afraid of failure, who are afraid of, being laughed at, or trying a new hobby that they actually really, really love, but they're afraid of people laughing at them trying to do this at this stage of their life. And so all of these gifts that we have are not being tapped into. And this is a loss to our world.
Have you ever had to forgive yourself?
Yeah. Yeah, I have. This is a tough one. And this is one that I'm just gonna, because I could cry a lot on this one too. Um, um, I have a father who I had to end my relationship with because he's sick. I'm the only daughter. I have 3 brothers. And we tried so very hard. Right, this is back for when I was 14, to get him help. And it's been 5 years this Christmas since I've had a relationship with him. He lives 5 minutes up the road from me. And it's hard. So when you speak to forgiveness, it's because of my heart, because of my history with health and wanting to quote unquote fix people and help people, you know, and you want to do that for people, especially your own father. The more you tried to help, you couldn't, because he has some dark wounds. There's a lot there. And so there comes a point in your life where sometimes you have to do what's right for your health, your happiness, your family, because he inflicted a lot of pain on me. So where I am in that stage of healing, because I lived with regret for a long time. Regret that I didn't have a father, a quote unquote father, in terms of what we know fathers to be. And that I stepped away from him, you know, because part of his the wounds is that you don't care about me. You just be you. You're so selfish. You don't care about me. So that's the way he would inflict his pain back on me, you know. But you can only take on so much abuse for so long. And you know, somebody knows that they have help available to them. Like, you know, I'm always like, I can help you, I can see you, I can be there for you, but you have to be willing to show up for yourself too. So I've had to learn how to forgive myself for having to walk away, and also for not being able to help them. That's taken time. And to me, I think that's the last part of my healing that has to keep coming. I've done some work on it. Sometimes you just have to take a break, right? It's heavy, right? But I know I'm a good person, and sometimes we have to step away, you know, and do what's right for our family.
It sounds, you know, what I'm almost picking up is like there's a version of narcissism there.
Yeah, there's definitely some narcissistic behavior there, and there's mental health, there's mental illness too. I think it's a combination. We used to always think that was mental illness based on some stuff from history, but I think there's just a lot of anger. I think there was stuff from his childhood, who knows? But the narcissistic behavior, yeah, absolutely. because he could then pull you back in and be so cruel and pull you back in. And he knew how to play that. He knew how to, and the more I would give a little bit, the more he took. And then the wounds would come in again. And then my self-esteem would get broken down again. And that's how it played out, like with all of us, with all of us. So it's unfortunate. Like I don't have anger towards him anymore. I have sadness towards his life, but for some reason, that's the path that some people take. And it's not for me to figure it out, because we can only do so much for people, especially when it comes at an expense to our own selves. So now it's just, that's probably why I value my husband so much, right? Because he's a great father. He's a very fantastic father. So it's just nice to be able to see that. But my father wasn't able to give that. He didn't have that ability to give love, even from childhood, right? So what I know now about, and I think this is the part of it where, because I've done so much healing and I've done so much learning about like childhood wounds and inner child and, all of that, I think that's when sometimes I want to open the door again. I would open the door again to some type of relationship. But yet his patterns are all the same, and is this really something that I'm ready for? And I don't think I am. So it's, I understand why he was unable to give the love. I understand that there was wounds in him, so that what he projected onto me wasn't done to hurt me, but it came from his own wounds.
Is there any reflection on what your relationship with your father versus your relationship when you talked about your relationship with your husband? I mean, was there a connection there in traits or behaviors?
I haven't really unpacked that one a ton, but I do know that right from a young age, I was always attracted to older men, like right from the very beginning. So I think I just, was I looking for, I don't even want to say a father figure, but just, there was a lot of love. I can say this, that I definitely, not so much with my husband now, but like with earlier, when you're a kid and you're dating and stuff, like I definitely seek to love from men just because I didn't get it from my father. Yeah, I can definitely identify with that,
As you spoke there was sort of getting this vision of somebody that's preparing food for their other half, their family, whatever. That I'm wondering, how do you monitor the intention or the energy? And I can't, I'm sort of some ways relating it back to my own life, I suppose, where when a dinner is served or prepared, first of all, it's saying, is it to create a space for the family, or is it seeking that, to serve, as a service? And then does how much, obviously how it's received, how much energy is given, and how much does that depend? Because if somebody doesn't fully appreciate, kind of going, I've slaved for X amount of time, and yet you have not shown my expected level of gratitude. So the food has come with an intention.
Yeah, there's so much there, and it makes me think back to things that have been shared by clients to me. Yeah, for some people, I keep wanting to say women. I just have to say women because that's what is coming here. For so many women, to give love is done through food, is done through, because that is how they associate love with food with love. So to prepare and put love into a meal, to have it not be appreciated, to not be thanked, to not be, given gratitude for that, that upsets women very much. Yeah. And also, yeah, for a lot of women who are seeking, this isn't so much my story, but I know it exists, that when they're lacking belief in themselves and they're trying to gain love from the people that live in their home, they're trying to be seen. Like, do you see me here? And so I'm going to put all this time into this meal for you. This is how you'll notice me. I'm going to make you your favorite meal. And they come in and they don't even notice that you've made their favorite foods. They eat the meal in less than 5 minutes flat and walk away from the kitchen table and leave you to clean up the mess. And there is the woman left, again, feeling unheard, unseen, and misunderstood. So yeah. So then that also, if I had a woman come to me and talking about this, I also will then know, like, you might be quick to just judge the people who ate the meal, but I feel we also need to address her need of validation, right? Because we can do so much for people in this world in order to be able to feel seen and loved. And if you don't get what you think you're supposed to get, then you're left resentful and angry. So you still have to look at those underlying beliefs. Like, to me, it's great to serve and support people and do things for people, but you have to also look at the reason why you're doing it. That's really important. What's your why behind it? What's fueling that behavior?
I think that's kind of almost what I was picking up on, is in that when it's given with an intention or with
Yes.
uh, with an expectation, I think, for want of a better word, that's the nigh on impossible. They appreciate it too much, or they appreciate it not enough. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of going, unless you somehow hit my exact expectation here, this will be classified as a mismatch.
Yep.
But yet, it is an impossible situation, because one's of service, and if you don't receive in the right way,
Well, and this goes back to like love languages, right? And that's why it's so important for us to know ourselves, be able to see the parts of ourselves that, like, I openly admit that I sought validation from people. Like, I was the one, Pete, who was raising her hand, offering to do things that nobody was even asking to be done, because I wanted to be seen as the person who did things. Look at Kim, look at what she's doing. So we have to do that. We have to unpack the parts of ourselves, the dark parts of ourselves that, are a little bit sometimes embarrassing, shameful. Like, it's hard to look at those dark parts of ourselves, but we have to do that, first of all. And then we also have to be willing to know what we need. Like, there's nothing wrong with needing to feel loved and appreciated. Like, we need that. There's nothing wrong with it. But don't expect somebody to know what you need from them if you're not willing to talk to them. So if your husband is continually or your wife is continually mistreating you and not valuing the work that you're putting in at the table and the meal preparation, you need to voice that. People don't know unless you tell them. So instead, people get resentful and then they go eat, right? Like, we have to be willing to speak. We have to be willing to share. and deal with conflict and deal with like argument. Like we have to be willing to have these conversations. That's how we get where we want to get to in our world, in our relationships.
I'm also reflecting it. It's interesting, and even just down to the wording, and we talked about, a family gathering. It's like you can't have a family gathering without food.
Yeah.
Well, it's like,
yeah,
you can.
Yeah, but yeah, and you absolutely can. Like again, it's not right or wrong, but it is a fact. It is a fact. So I just know that shows up a lot, because for people that have lack of, I want to use the word lack of control, because that's how they say it. I have no control. So then everything's around food, around food, around food. It's just like it's another place. So then what happens, Pete, is people stop going out to family functions. They stop going places because they don't want to be around the food. Like I remember as a kid, here's a memory. I remember as a child, probably in around the 13, 14-year-old range, where it was Christmas. We always had a ton of people over for Christmas and a lot of food. I would purposely go out and shovel, like, later on in the evening. I would go out and shovel the snow. And I would say, oh, I'm just going to go shovel the snow. No, I was trying to get away from food. So food has a pull on a lot of things. I know it's fascinating, because people that don't necessarily have some of that history, like there's a lot of things I could share with you, Pete. Like I used to eat in the middle of the night and not even know it. There's like so many things I could share. This is what happens when we get preoccupied and obsessed with food. It just does crazy things to us.
And as you say, I mean, it sort of circles slightly back to, it's a symptom, not a cause, right?
Yeah.
It's just because it shows up over here, that's kind of going, this is a connection back to something, what appears to be potentially completely unrelated, but yet you follow the, connect the dots back, and suddenly, I'm not saying it would make certain sense, but it will certainly go some way to explaining value sets, what's going on.
Totally. And that's my role, right? Like I'm looking at the psychology, the thoughts, feelings, and beliefs around our behaviors with food. So we never can know how certain things shaped who we are now. And it's just important to bring it up, because women just, there's so much, the world of the dieting space, the diet culture space, everything's like, you don't have enough willpower. You're not strong enough. You don't want it hard enough. You're not trying hard enough. No, it's called, we've been shaped. Like your upbringing, Pete, for you in your home with your parents was very different than mine. We've all got our own, did you have a television in your home? Maybe you didn't. Well, I did. Did you have a babysitter who might have had an eating disorder? So that you're witnessing, like you're picking things up all the time. Like we're little sponges, right? So it gives us permission to understand that our history has shaped us to some level, but then there comes a point in our life where if it's not serving us, we have to be willing to do the work to learn how to reshape our brain. Thankfully, we can do that, and we can create new beliefs, new ways of thinking for ourselves that serve the next stage of our life.
It's just even to unpack that, and I think a number of people will start to understand that there's so much more to this. This is, on the surface it's one thing, but it's understanding that there's more. I think if people realize that alone, that is extremely powerful.
Yeah, and just be willing to look at your history. Like, I just want to say this too, like people think that what they're doing is working for them. But I question, is it? Is it really working for you? And so to me, we have to not dictate, but we have to like redefine. I have redefined what health means for me. I have redefined what happiness means for me. I have redefined what success means for me. And we all have the ability to do that if you're willing to have a little walk with yourself.
No, and there's so much there, and it may take a couple of walks.
Many. I'm still walking.
No, that's it, and that's that's what we say. A lot of people, life is a journey; it's not a destination.
That's
You
right.
know,
That's
so
right.
much. Kim, if we were to try and pin down what your fire in the belly is in 1 or 2 words, what would it be?
Did you say family values?
No, your fire in the belly in 1 or 2
Oh, fire in
words.
the belly. Yeah, my fire in the belly is helping people and myself continue to do their heart, to do what's calling from their heart and their belly. It's like, I need to do this thing. I need to show up in the world and do this. My fire in the belly is recognizing that I have lessons I've learned in my life, and they were given to me for a reason. And I have to keep doing the work so that I can help other women who are on this this path that is not serving them. And being able to ignite what is there, that we just have to be able to find again.
Love it. Kim, tell us, where can people reach out to you, follow you, hunt you down, track you down?
Thanks, Pete. Website is kimbasler.com, and I'm very active on both Facebook and Instagram. Facebook, you can search me by my name, and then Instagram, I'm Kim Basler _food freedom. Yeah, I appreciate so much this conversation and welcome anyone who's willing to have these conversations. It's once you start to do this work and you start to unpack life a little bit, I have a hard time just talking superficially now. This is a good conversation. We certainly took a lot of different directions today. I felt so many different emotions today.
It's good too, though, isn't it? It's like a muscle. You just
Yeah.
stretch it and pull it, and that's what it's all about.
Absolutely.
What's a final message you'd like to leave with people?
Final message. As cliche as it sounds, is feel it. Feel what's inside of you. The whispers are coming. We all have these whispers. So spend time with yourself. Press pause in your life and allow those whispers to come up, and listen to them and unpack them. Get help. You don't have to do it alone. That's the other thing I want to say, is don't feel like you got to do life alone. There's always somebody that's experienced what you're experiencing, and there's people that want to help you, because we all deserve to live a life that is full of all the feels. It's all normal.
Love it. Kim, thank you for being here. Thank you for being so present, and thank you for sharing so much. I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. I appreciated it too.